Scream, take one. Protein shake in a pot. He'd say, what's your sister like? I'd say, men. The song's been in my head all day. Hey guys, what's up? It is me, Emric, and I'm back. May we back again, part 2, sister act, back in the habit, all that good shit that I say. How are you guys? What's going on? Okay, so this video is actually kind of jumping the queue a little bit. So if in my introduction to my next video, I say that I talked about something that isn't this video, that would be why. And that is a very good reason, because I went watching the new Scream movie and I wanted to get a video up about it because I'm a massive fan of the Scream franchise, because honestly, this movie's just been so influential. It's had a massive impact on me as like an artist and as a person. I recently shot a whole fashion film based on a concept that was introduced in Scream 2, where essentially Sydney's character was doing the Cassandra aria. So I booked a whole church, the whole thing. It's a whole mess. And as such, I just wanted to give some of my thoughts on the new Scream movie. And then we will do a review of the original Scream from 1996? Question mark? Maybe I should Google that. Feel like it's 1996, but 1996, yes! So today we are going to be going over my thoughts on the new Scream movie and then doing my makeup whilst I talk about the original, the classic 1996 Scream. So I would like to start off by saying, when talking about the new Scream movie, I will be calling it Scream 5 just for ease. I know it's technically called Scream, but the original that I'm going to be talking about in a minute is also called Scream. So calling it Scream 5, deal with it. I suppose I could call it Scream 2022, but that's a lot of numbers, so I don't want to do that. I would like to say, however, that in keeping with the request of the Scream 5 movie, this will be a spoiler-free review. When you go to watch Scream 5, it very clearly says, before the movie even starts, don't spoil this shit. People are gonna want to watch it. This is a beloved franchise. Don't be a dick. Don't spoil it. If you haven't seen the movie, don't worry. I know it's still in cinemas, so I'm not going to spoil it, but I will be talking about some of the broader themes of the movie. Okay? Let's go. Also, editing Emric, just popping in to add, if you have no interest in hearing about Scream 5, then you can just skip to the review of the original Scream, and a timestamp will be in the description below. So, Scream 5, in my opinion, is really a love letter to the fans. Like, the whole movie is essentially, I wouldn't call it a call out, but is definitely a nod to the fandom and, you know, the people who have kept the franchise alive and made sure that it's so beloved, made sure that it kind of endured, if that makes sense. So inevitably, some people are gonna watch Scream 5 and they're gonna have no real love for the franchise. You know, like, this may be the first Scream movie that they've ever seen. As such, I kind of think that a fair few people are going to miss a lot of what this movie has to offer and a lot of what this movie has to say, because honestly, truly, madly, deeply do, a lot of this movie is references to the other movies, and I loved that. Like, there were several times whilst watching this movie where I was like, well, that's a direct reference to Scream 2. Well, that's a direct reference to Scream 3. And there were even references to Scream 4, which, you know, even though Scream 4 was not my cup of tea, not my favorite movie by any stretch of the imagination, you know, it has its place in the Scream canon, and I think that's great. I really like that they did that. I think that's lovely. And I think that this franchise, almost more than a lot, if I'm being particularly honest, really celebrates its fans. And I think that this movie is a thank you, but is also kind of a message. It kind of basically is saying, like, don't worry too much, because we obviously understand that Scream can't last forever, at least in its current iteration. Like, these actors are not going to want to keep coming back, essentially, is what the movie basically says to you. Like, these people are not going to want to keep coming back. We need to, like, branch out and move this franchise in a new direction. And this is the movie that we're doing it in. So we are essentially starting again with a new cast, with new characters, new relationship. If we want to continue making Scream movies, then, we have to adapt. And I think that's good. I think that's great. And I completely understand, where they're coming from with that general sentiment. And I also think that, New Sydney will be a pretty good carrier of the mantle of the kind of Scream queen. I see what I did there? Scream queen, yeah. Not just a pretty face. I also will say, without a shadow of a doubt, that this is definitely the funniest Scream movie to date. I'm not sure that's what a lot of people look for when they go to watch a horror movie. However, I will say, in my opinion, Scream has always been camp. The soundtrack is actually pretty good. They had 070 Shake in there, and they had some classics from Scream, like Devil's Right Hand or whatever that song's called. That one. So I loved that. And I also have to say that the kills in this movie are probably some of the best of the entire franchise. Every Scream movie has got that one kind of what? Death, and this movie is no exception. I won't spoil who it happens to, but one character does get hit in the face with a bottle of hand sanitizer and then set on fire. They go up like a Christmas pudding. Their entire face melts off. I was watching it and I was just like, ooh, goddamn girl, ooh. However, despite really liking the movie, obviously I have some criticisms. So this movie makes it very clear. It says it multiple times in the movie. Everything relates back to the beginning. This all goes back to Scream 1. And okay, cool. But when I was watching the movie, I found that in the third act, everything went back to Scream 1, but not for Gail. And to be honest, I think that was a pretty large missed opportunity. There is one point where something happens to Gail, and she kind of just turns around and says to Sydney, okay, yeah, you go finish it. That doesn't seem really like the character that we all kind of, know and love. Gail doesn't really wait for things to happen to her. She kind of takes charge of the things happening around her. So I thought that was just a little bit off. But that kind of more minor point aside, I think my biggest qualm with the film is that I'm not entirely sold on Ghostface motivation in this movie. I think it draws a little too heavily from a past entry in the Scream franchise, specifically Scream 2. I understand it's meta. Scream is a meta commentary. It's a meta horror movie. I just don't really buy it. And it's also kind of a Frankenstein monster of Jill's motivations from Scream 4 with Billy and Stu's plan from Scream 1. It basically just throws them all in a blender and is like, this is why and this is how. I also have a further complaint with one of the characters in this movie. Scream is pretty famous for its interconnectivity. This movie is essentially about the legacies of the characters and how, it kind of haunts them in a karmic cycle. And also, Scream is known to set up and pay off. They don't really do things accidentally. This movie, unlike a lot of Scream movies, actually has a character that doesn't deliver really any payoff. When I was watching the film, I was like, oh, this is interesting, because I was sat there drawing parallels between this character and Maureen Prescott. Obviously, not everyone's going to have a one-to-one doppelganger, but I was kind of thinking that this is, where they may be going. And then the character really doesn't do anything or go anywhere. And that kind of disappointed me, because I'm so used to such good payoff from pretty much every character that's introduced. Maybe they're saving it for a sequel. Can't really say. Slightly disappointed in that. But this movie, all in all, I will give a 3.7 out of 5. And if you would like to get some of my more, live takes on movies as I'm watching them, you can make sure to follow me on Twitter at Emric Jones, and I'll also post similar things to my Instagram story if that's the medium you prefer. So with all that said and done, let's get into my review of the classic 1996 movie, Scream. So Scream starts with what is, in my mind, one of the best opening sequences of any movie ever made. And I'm not joking. Like, this opening sequence to the original Scream is legendary for a reason. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the success of the original Scream really comes off the way that it got the audience hooked within the first 15 minutes. So we open on the interior of a house where a phone is ringing and a call is delivered to Casey Becker, played by the illustrious and at the time the most famous person in this movie, Drew Barrymore, who is making some popcorn and getting ready to watch a scary movie.
Hello?
And everything seems pretty innocent at first, you know? The call comes in, yeah, it's a wrong number, but the guy on the other end of the phone, he sounds kind of charming. He's even a little bit flirty. He asks Casey what her favorite scary movie is, and she thinks about it for a second and she says that it's Halloween. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who goes around stalking babysitters. And continuing with their conversation, the voice asks Casey, you know, hey, do you have a boyfriend? And, you know, maybe she's feeling a little flirty, so she says no. No, she doesn't have a boyfriend. And then the voice replies, you know, you never told me your name. She says, why do you want to know my name? And then the voice replies, because I want to know who I'm looking at. And this right here is why I love this movie. Because let me break it down. You know, we've all been sat at home and I don't know, maybe you've been in the kitchen or something and you've looked outside and something's moved, or like, you know, maybe it's a tree that's blown or something's gone in the back garden, something fell over, and you've immediately been freaked the fuck out, you know, the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up, you're immediately just like, what is that? You feel like you're being watched. And this is the kind of fear that this opening scene really taps into. The camera at this point just pans straight in on Casey's face and dogs start barking in the background. Right then and there, you know, this bitch gon' get it. Sayonara. Now, apparently, in real life, Drew Barrymore was actually offered the lead in Scream, so she was essentially offered the role of Sidney Prescott, but she said that she actually fought for her character to be killed in the opening sequence because she was sick of how predictable horror movies were getting, because you could always tell who was going to be, you know, the main star and the survivor because they were the most famous person in the movie. But to be honest, I think she made the right decision. Drew Barrymore has gotten some mileage out of this character. Like, I swear every Halloween I see someone going as Casey Becker. This bitch could start her own wig line just selling those like blunt bang bobs, and they would sell out every Halloween. So by this point, Casey is quite freaked out and the cat and mouse game is continuing, but Casey is really over it. So she hangs up the phone and she's essentially like, no, I don't want to speak to you anymore. But every time she hangs up the phone, the guy just calls right back, and wouldn't you know it, that popcorn that she was making earlier is really starting to burn. And this all culminates when the voice on the phone really takes a turn. Sick of Casey hanging up on him, he says to her, listen here, you little bitch. You hang up on me again and I'll gut you like a fish, you understand? Whew. This bitch really gon' get it. The voice then says that they're gonna play a little game, and then proceeds to call her Blondie, indicating that whomever is on this phone can indeed see her right now. So it's become very apparent at this point that the only interest of the killer is to see what her insides look like. And then the voice on the phone introduces a concept that will essentially become a staple of the Scream franchise, and will run throughout every single iteration of the movie after this point, which is essentially that the voice on the other end of the phone bases their entire persona around a glorification of existing real-world horror movies. You know, things like Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, In more modern iterations, they mention things like the Babadook. But at this point, Casey is not only terrified, but she's getting really pissed off. Like, she is not happy with this turn of events. And she tells the voice on the phone, in perhaps her most iconic line, that she lied before. And she does have a boyfriend. And then Casey makes sure that he knows that her boyfriend is big and he plays football and he'll kick the shit out of you!
He's big and he plays football and he'll kick the shit out of you!
Honestly, iconic behavior. Plus, this does not faze the person on the other end of the phone who already knows that her boyfriend's name is Steve. And this obviously terrifies Casey even more because this person has an intimate knowledge of her and her boyfriend, and she has absolutely no idea who this is or what they're doing. But then the voice tells her to turn on the patio light again, which she does, only to find Steve tied up and bleeding profusely from the head. So she initially makes a move to, go outside to untie Steve, and the killer reminds her, hey, that's probably not the best idea. So she locks the door again, and now it's time to play the game. So if you were wondering what the game was, it is going to be a fun little ditty called Movie Trivia. If Casey can get the question right, then Steve will live. However, if Casey gets the question wrong, then Steve will die. And they start with, just a little test round, and Casey gets the question right. So far, so good. But now it's time for the real question. Who is the killer in Friday the 13th? In her rush to save her boyfriend's life, Casey inadvertently blurts out that the killer is the iconic machete-wielding Jason. Casey, everybody knows
Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the original killer. Jason didn't show up until the sequel. I'm afraid that was a wrong answer.
poor Steve. His insides are now on the outside. He's gutted, rotted, and dead. But the game is not over, and Casey is still not safe. For the question that may save her life, she is asked what door the killer is at. And she essentially refuses to answer the question. She says that she can't. The killer says, okay, well, that's your choice. It's game on, bitch. Killer throws a chair through the window. The house is filling with smoke from the popcorn that's still burning. Casey runs to the kitchen and grabs a knife and manages to get outside and hide from the killer. Luckily for her, in the distance, she sees her parents' car coming up the road, so she decides to make a run for it. But the killer finds her, and she is unfortunately stabbed mere meters away from her completely unsuspecting parents. Now, at this point, when she was stabbed, Casey was still holding the phone that the killer was talking to her on. And I guess she was stabbed somewhere close to the neck, so she couldn't really talk. And it always annoyed me that she didn't just throw the phone to get her parents' attention, because they were literally meters away from her. If she would have just thrown the phone, they would have looked over and saw her, about to get stabbed. She does get in a good knee to the balls, but it really isn't enough to stop the onslaught that is coming at her by way of a knife. The parents enter the house. They see it's completely trashed. They start freaking out. They see the dead body of the boyfriend in the back, and they're just like, what the fuck? The mother immediately knows that something terrible has happened to her daughter, and the father tells her to go call the police. She picks up the phone, and she can hear her daughter's final breath. Like, she can hear her daughter getting stabbed on the other end of the phone. I cannot imagine the counseling that woman would have needed after that. The dad then tells her to drive down to the Mackenzies and get some help. As she leaves the house, she's confronted with the sight of her daughter hanging from a tree with her guts just spread everywhere. Truly a terrifying vision. I first watched this movie when I was 10. Real life insight. I bought this movie on VHS from a second-hand market stall for 50p, and I was terrified. I did not want to be home alone for at least a month after watching this movie. And just like that, Scream has established its unique selling point of having a very cinematic opening kill that really just gets the audience going and is their introduction to the movie. So in the next scene, we cut to our main character, who is named Sydney, when her bubble butt boyfriend Billy crawls through her bedroom window. She screams in surprise and is then interrupted by her father, who hears the scream and obviously comes to investigate, and essentially then ends up telling Sydney that, hey, he's going to be leaving tomorrow, he's going to be going to a convention, and that if she needs him, he'll be at the Hilton by the airport. Once he leaves, Billy then tells her that he was at home and he was watching The Exorcist, and it got him thinking of her. How romantic. Essentially, he says that the movie he was watching was edited for television, and as such, all of the good parts were cut out. And that got him thinking about their relationship and how when they initially got together, they started off hot and heavy, you know? They were going strong and building towards essentially fucking. But that lately he feels like they are just edited for television. In order to, you know, I guess absolve her boyfriend's concerns, Sydney makes out with him a little bit, but when he tries to finger blast her, she politely tells him to leave, and as a kind of consolation prize, she just shows him a bit of titty, which, you know, a little bit of titty never hurt nobody. Ain't nothing wrong with that. And watching this, I'm always like, god damn, straight relationships are weird, man. Like, I once had a guy come to my workplace and, you know, try and bring me coffee. And I literally said, if you ever do this again, I will call the police. If someone crawled through my window, it would be on sight. Nope, no ma'am. There is absolutely no way if someone crawled through my window, I would not push them the fuck out of it. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200 pounds. Do not collect your balls off the floor once I bite them off. No way. But I guess she finds it cute or whatever, so we cut to the next day. Exterior, Woodborough High, where a police cordon is blocking the entrance, and we are treated to our first shot of reporter Gail Weathers. And bitch, she's wearing this fucking suit. Oh, this suit is so cute. Oh my god, bitch, I want this fucking suit so bad. Give me the suit! Oh, it's such a look. But before Sydney can go up to Gail, she's interrupted by her best friend, who is named Tatum. Essentially, like, if Gail is the sexy MILF that you want to turn into in your late 20s, Tatum is the sassy cheerleader with constantly hard nipples that you want to be in your teens. Essentially, she tells Sid that they are interrogating the entire school to figure out who killed Casey and Steve, and that it's the worst crime that they've seen in years. Worse than, well, it's bad. So Sydney is brought into the principal's office and asked some questions, just like every other member of the school, by Sheriff Burke and another one of our leading gentlemen, Dewey Riley. Girl, even in the 90s that mustache was bad. Come on, like, he is a lovely man and a great character, but my guy looks like the fourth member of Alvin and the Chipmunks. So we are almost done with character introductions, only two left. Randy Meeks, who is, well, the meekest of the group, and Stu Maher, Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Okay, it's Shaggy. And Stu, king of subtlety that he is, comes out with this.
You take a knife and you slit him from groin to sternum.
And every time I watch it, I'm just like, no way in hell. If I was sat there, one of my friends just kind of casually dropped in that they knew how to gut someone, I would be walking my ass all the way to the left. You think I just continue to hang around that person after they've casually just dropped into conversation that they take a knife and split someone from groin to sternum? No. So the scene changes and we cut to Sydney's house, and essentially Tatum has told her that since her father is out of town, she can come and stay at her house with Deputy Dewey Riley because they are related, and that she will pick her up after cheerleading practice at 7 o'clock. So Sydney kind of sits down, starts watching TV, and there on the television is Gail Weathers. And Gail is wearing that fucking suit again. Oh my god, that suit is so fucking cute. Gail is talking about the murders, and she reveals that this is not the first time that the small community of Woodsboro has been rocked by tragedy. In fact, just a year ago, wife and mother Maureen Prescott was murdered and raped, and that Cotton Weary is set to be executed for the crime. And this is essentially why Sydney has been feeling so uncomfortable about everything, because all of the media attention and all of the circus surrounding Casey and Steve's death is just reminding her of what happened a year prior to her mother. She also hears a little bit of squeaking coming from the inside of one of her cupboards, but she decides that she's gonna go take a nap and doesn't really think too much of it. So Sydney wakes up when the phone rings, and it's Tatum, who apologizes because she's running a little bit late, and also says that she is going to stop by the video store where Randy works and pick up a movie. Specifically, Tatum says that she wants to pick up All the Right Moves starring Tom Cruise because...
You know, if you pause it just right, you can see his penis.
And I'm not gonna lie, after I saw this movie, I tried it. Fight me. Turns out that yes, indeed, you can do this. When I was 11, I went and bought that movie for 50p from the same secondhand market stall, paused it, yep, saw that dick. And on that day, I found out that pretty much all flaccid penises look kind of the same, so. That's a life lesson well learned. So the call ends, and then Sydney gets another call from the killer. So since we've seen the killer, do his thing, I will now be referring to the killer as Ghostface because that's what he's known as. And now the conversation between Sydney and Ghostface almost starts off similarly to the one he had with Casey the night before. Sydney, for some reason, thinks that the person on the other end of the phone is Randy. I guess because the voice is asking her, what's her favorite scary movie, and Randy has a real reputation for loving horror movies. And in response to the classic question of what's your favorite scary movie, Sydney says,
some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
Give it 5 minutes, bitch. So Ghostface tells her that he is not Randy. And when she asks, well then, who are you? The reply she gets is that she shouldn't be asking who he is. She should be asking where he is. Oh, she does, and says, well then, where are you? And he replies that he's on her front porch. So Sydney goes to investigate, and it turns out that the person is indeed lying and is not on her front porch. She then goes back inside, locks the door, and oops, wouldn't you know it, Ghostface is waiting for her inside of her cupboard. So he attacks Sydney. Sydney runs upstairs, the very thing she just said that she wouldn't be doing, and locks herself in her room. Ghostface can't get in, and when she goes to call the police, she finds out that her telephone line has been disconnected. So she somehow manages to call the police using her computer. I have no idea how you do that to this day. I should probably look that up. But Ghostface disappears, and look who's climbing through her window again. It's Billy. And Billy drops a mobile phone. And Sid is immediately suspicious. Billy gets arrested, and Gail Weathers is on the scene reporting in that suit again, bitch! Give me that suit! Please. She also delivers a line that I quote as much as I can.
Look, Kenny.
Yeah?
I know that you're about 50 pounds overweight, but when I say hurry, please interpret that as move your fat tub of lard ass now!
Diva behavior. We stan. So everyone is taken to the police station. I can't find my eyeliner, and Sheriff Burke calls Billy's father. Billy's father is told that they will be pulling the records of his cell phone to see if he's the one who made the calls to Casey and to Sydney. And meanwhile, we get some classic sibling behavior where Tatum throws an absolute bitch fit at Dewey, which is never ever not funny.
What did Mama tell you? When I wear this badge, you treat me like a man of the law.
I'm sorry, Deputy Dewey boy, but we're ready to go now, okay?
Whoa. Take him out the back way, avoid that circus.
Come on.
Touch me.
He's my superior.
Janitor's your superior.
So in order to avoid all of the press that is congregating outside, the sheriff suggests that they take the back exit, and who is waiting? But of course, Gail Weathers. And I swear, if this bitch has the audacity to wear this suit one more time and not hand it over, I promise I won't mention it again. All I'm gonna say is, I think it's Mugler, and if someone were to hypothetically buy me this suit, I would send them nudes. So Gail, whilst reporting, asks if Sydney is okay, and Tatum kind of tries to take her away from Gail, but Sydney's like, no, she's just doing her job. And Sydney asks Gail how the book is going. Now, we as the audience hadn't heard about a book before, so this is the first time it's introduced. Gail says that it's going well and that it's going to be out next year. She also says that she'll send Sydney a copy, at which point Sydney punches her in the face. We will later find out in about, I don't know, I think like 2 scenes time, that the reason the animosity exists between Gail and Sydney is because Gail wrote a book about the murder of Sydney's mother, and Gail also thinks that the person who is in prison for the murder of Maureen, named Cotton Weary, is innocent, despite the fact that it's Sydney's testimony that put Cotton in jail. Sydney then returns to Tatum and Dewey's house, only to get another phone call from the killer, who informs her that she has fingered the wrong guy. Again. So the next day, Sydney goes to Gail, who is understandably quite pissed with her because, you know, she punched her in the face. And Gail understands pretty quickly that these murders are all related to Maureen, and that the person who killed Maureen is indeed the person who is committing these murders. And can I just say, Gail's reaction here is so me. It is so millennial gay, because she really does not care that Cotton is, you know, an innocent man in prison. She just cares that if she's right about this, her books are gonna sell like gangbusters. She's just like, this is gonna sell my book. We need to maximize. We need to double down on this, because think of the shmoney, bitch. I could buy 6 of these suits in different fucking colors. I could have one in pink, one in purple, one in red. Yes, bitch, that suit. I'm done. We then have our first interaction between Dewey and Gail, which is very cute. They flirt. Dewey also unintentionally shows us that he's delusional.
Of course, you don't look a day over 12, except in that upper torso area. Does the force require you to work out?
No, ma'am. Because of my boyish good looks, muscle mass has increased my acceptance as a Sears police officer.
But he is tricked into revealing the fact that Sydney's father has not been ruled out as a suspect. The scene changes and Stu suggests that they all go and have a party at his house in order to celebrate the fact that school has been cancelled due to the recent events. How do you spell cliche? But also, I'm not gonna lie, like, if my workplace was closed because, I don't know, people who work there were just like suddenly dying, hell yeah, I'd go to the club. Like, I wouldn't have any parties at my place because I don't trust bitches not to steal from me. But you know, I go to a bar. For real, for real. So their principal dies, RIP, and Sid and Tatum have a heart-to-heart about the rumors surrounding Maureen Prescott. There's also a mention of the, quote, Richard Gere gerbil story, which for anyone who doesn't know, there was like a weird rumor going around in like the 80s that Richard Gere had to go to hospital or get taken to the ER because he put a gerbil up his butt and it got stuck. There was also another one about Rod Stewart that said he had to get his stomach pumped because he took too many loads from blowing sailors. Oh, the 90s. So the kids are all partying and Dewey and Gail are there to, I don't know, supervise. They're there for some reason. And they go to check out an abandoned car that has been spotted not too far away from the party and has been reported to Dewey's boss, the sheriff. But before she leaves, Gail actually puts a remote transmitter inside the party in order to, you know, capture everything that happens. And this transmitter actually broadcasts to her news van, which is being manned by her cameraman Joel just outside. Now, at this point in the night, Tatum, whose nipples honestly deserve their own credit in this movie, goes down to the basement to get a beer and is, of course, confronted by Ghostface. Now, Tatum initially just thinks that it's a joke, but when it becomes clear that she is in actual danger, she puts up a hell of a fight. Tatum, I think, may have actually been able to survive if she didn't make the fatal mistake of trying to escape through a cat door in the garage, at which point the killer essentially just, makes the door open and Tatum is essentially pulled upwards and her neck is snapped by the machine. R.I.P. Tatum. I loved you. I guess this just gives a whole new meaning to the phrase, murder that pussy. Get it? Cat flap. She's murdered. Whatever, it was funny. So at the party, Sid and Billy have a moment and they end up going upstairs, at which point Sid confides in Billy that she wishes her life, wasn't so dramatic. Like, she kind of just wishes it was like a nice, simple Meg Ryan movie. Or at least a good porno. Essentially indicating that she is ready to throw that cat. Which she does, and the two of them have sex. On a personal level, I have never found any of the men in really any of the Screams to be particularly attractive, with the exception of Mickey from Scream 2, who is played by Timothy Oliphant, and to this day, he could step on my fucking neck. But anyway, back downstairs, Randy is explaining that there are certain rules that one must abide by in order to survive a horror movie. And they are that you can never have sex, you can never drink or do drugs, and most importantly, you should never say that you will be right back, because you will not be right back.
Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back!
Now, back to Dewey and Gail. After a little romantic tumble, they find a car, which Dewey recognizes as belonging to Sydney's father. He'd also received information from the sheriff that it wasn't Billy's phone that made the calls to Cece and to Sydney, but it was in fact Neil Prescott, Sydney's father's phone. So he is immediately worried, and they make their way back to the house. The house by this point is pretty much empty because everybody left to go see the principal's dead body when it was hanging from goalposts. Yikes. And kind of cutting back to Sid, she asks Billy, who did you call? Like, when you're arrested, you're allowed one phone call, so who did you call? And he says that he called his father, but she replies, no, you didn't. The sheriff actually called your father. I know that because I was there. But I'm like, bitch, you didn't want to ask that question before you threw the cat? You didn't want to ask that before you let him all up inside your business? No? Okay. All right. Well, whatever. You do you. But anyway, Billy gets stabbed. And Sid is now in full flight mode. She is running for her life. In fact, she's so desperate to escape that she throws herself out of an attic window and lands only to come face to face with Tatum's dead body. Meanwhile, in a very meta moment, Randy is sat in the living room and the killer is right behind him. And he's just like, behind you, Jamie, behind you. Whilst he's, watching a movie of Jamie Lee Curtis. But in real life, the actor's name is Jamie, so Scream being meta once again.
Jamie, look behind you. Look behind you. Turn around. Behind you. Oh, turn behind you.
After leaving the house, Sydney runs over to Gail's camera van, where the cameraman is watching the live feed, and on it they essentially see Randy almost get killed by Ghostface. But before Sydney can see what happens to Randy, Joel gets his throat slit. and Sydney barely manages to escape by tunneling her way through the van. Now she takes off running, but Dewey and Gail don't know what's going on inside the house, so they return to it. And Dewey tells Gail to go lock herself inside the van and call the sheriff. So she gets in the van and then she gets scared by Randy, who has no idea what's going on, and she smacks him in the face. And then she just speeds off.
Oh God, Kitty, I'm sorry, but get off my fucking windshield!
But in her panic, she almost hits Sydney with her truck, managing to swerve at the last minute and essentially tumbling down and smacking straight into a tree. FYI, in case you were wondering, at this point, Sydney does not give a single fuck about the fact that Gail just went careening off into a tree. She essentially just goes, eh, and then goes about her business. Rude. So Sid runs back towards the house and sees Dewey with a knife sticking out of his back, having been stabbed. She then locks herself inside the house, leaving Randy and Stu outside because she doesn't trust either of them. At which point, Billy comes tumbling down the stairs, apparently not dead, despite having been stabbed several times. She gives Billy the gun so he can defend them, and Billy opens the door. At which point, Randy comes in and says that Stu has gone mad, to which Billy replies,
We all go a little mad sometimes.
No, Billy!
the savagery. We then find out that Billy was never stabbed. In fact, he was just splashed with corn syrup, which incidentally is the same thing they use for pig blood in Carrie. So Sydney tries to run away, but she's blocked by Stu, who essentially informs her that the two of them have been in it together all along. The pair corner her in the kitchen and reveal their motivations. Billy is doing all of this because Sydney's mother slept with his father and is the reason that Billy's mother left them. And as for Stu, so according to the actor and several other parts in other Scream movies, Stu was just like a little bit in love with Billy. So I just kind of like went along with it. But before they kill Sydney, Stu reveals that they have her father, they've kidnapped him, and that they are going to pin all of the murders on him. They're essentially going to say that on the anniversary of his wife's murder, he went insane and, well, just decided to kill everybody. But in order to make it realistic, they must be hurt as well. So Billy and Stu take turns penetrating each other with knives. But Billy's knife is just too big, and he stabs a little too deep, causing Stu to be in serious pain. Before they shoot Sid, boom, Gail is back. She interrupts the whole thing, steals the gun, and tries to shoot Billy. But I guess Gail isn't very good with a gun, or has never had to use one before, because she forgets that the safety is on and is swiftly incapacitated by Mr. Loomis with a kick to the chest. In all the commotion and in Gail's distraction, Sydney manages to slip away, and now it's Stu and Billy's turn to get a call. They receive a phone call, and she's got their little voice modulator, and she tells them that she's already called the cops to report them, so no matter what happens now, they're not getting away with shit.
Did you really call the police?
You bet your sorry ass I did.
My mom and dad are gonna be so mad.
She then stabs Billy with a golf umbrella and gets into a tussle with Stu, who she kills by electrocuting him when she pushes a television onto his head. Andy then pops up again, only to be immediately knocked out by Billy, and he starts to choke Sydney, but is shot by Gail, who he forgot to kill again. Then, when all three of them are standing over Billy's body, Randy tells them to be careful because this is the point where the killer always pops up for one last scare. And Billy does, only to be shot in the head by Sydney. The scene then pans outside, and as Dewey and Randy are loaded into ambulances, the movie ends with a news report by Gail, who summarizes what had gone on as the scene pans over the beautiful Woodsboro scenery. And Finn. Now you tell me that wasn't a fun ride. Okay, so I'm gonna go pop on my lashes, and then we can do final thoughts. Whew. Ooh. Yeah, you like these titties? These jugs and these melons? So, in answer to the very obvious question, do I love Scream? The answer is yes. But why do I love Scream? I love them in part because they're a very campy, horror romp. And there are not a lot of those movies that really, really lean into the fact that, like, what we're doing is campery. And I really love that from Scream. But also, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to kind of digest from these movies. Scream 1 and 2 are movies that I can just turn on, have a good time, and kind of forget about the world too. I strongly, strongly encourage you, if you haven't seen these movies, to go give them a watch. And if you don't, well, maybe Ghostface will pay you a visit. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you like this look. If you do, make sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. You can find me on all of the social medias. They're listed down below. So go, give your bitch a follow. This takes a lot of time. Obviously not too much time. I didn't really bother doing any baby hairs, but that's none of your business. Fuck. I'm sat inside my house right now. What do you want from me? Okay guys, I'm gonna go play with these titties and these melons. So I'll see you later. Bye.